Every Life is America's pro-life diaper and wipes company. My family absolutely loves them. There's no harsh toxins. There's no chemicals. It's perfectly safe for your little one. We love Every Life, their mission, their vision, everything about them. Use my code VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTY10 for 10% off your first order. Alrighty, and we're back to All the Things podcast, where we literally talk about all the things. In the last episode, we talked about the foster care system. Becky shared her story, some statistics, what it looks like for aged out youth. And this segment, we're going to talk about homelessness. But before we jump into that, Becky, can you tell me the bright side of the foster care system? What have been your success stories, the victories, the reason why you keep doing what you're doing?
For sure. I think I shared in the last segment that we got into foster care for children. We stay in for parents. Mm-hmm. And so literally just today, I got a text message from one of the parents of a set of twins that we had as babies. And that, boy, they were tough too. Like, I ain't never had twins like naturally. Like, that was a whole nother ball game. Hold up. But she sent me a picture. They're growing so big, but they were reunited, right? Wow. We kept that relationship, and they actually went to a great aunt, but we kept that relationship. We've been able to resource her and encourage her and see the growth of these babies. Like, these were babies along the way, and that has been so cool to be like, hey, what worked whenever you did this? Like, oh, well, this worked, or, hey, now I'm going to give Devin, it's not his actual name. Now Devin is doing this. He's met this milestone whenever he came in so behind, but because of the work and the therapies and the things that he got in foster care, he's able to meet these milestones now. And so those are some wins, like with the babies. But I have some of my background is in youth ministry. I was a youth pastor for a minute, and teens have always been my thing. And I really thought when we got into foster care that that's all that we would foster was teens, right? Because it's kind of the unwanted, the overlooked, God was like, you're so cute. That's not actually what we're going to do all the time. But
what you want all the time.
I mean, I'm telling you, but you know what? Like, I think one of the biggest wins for us was about the young woman that I was sharing with in the last segment. When she left, it was a hard leave, but she came into our home not really knowing Jesus, not desiring a relationship with him, not really wanting to talk about him, didn't even want to be in the room when we prayed, like those sorts of things. But circling back around, like, she has been baptized. She started to desire going to church with us. She has her children in church. Wow. She's now like, she sent me back a message, and this was like a year later, because again, she was one of our first, but like a year later, just it was a text message outlining some of the simplest things that you would think that mattered.
Right.
But it was like a core memory for her of like, do you remember when you took me to get the blue shoes to match the blue and the flowers that was in that dress? Like, that meant so much to me. And I didn't even remember that. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that we just do, but it's not something that she ever had.
Yeah.
Nobody cared if she had shoes to match her blue flowers on her dress, you know? Or when I took her to get her hair cut because she tried to cut it and it looked ridiculous, and she knew it looked ridiculous, you know what I mean? And she's like, and whenever you took me to an actual salon to get my hair done, like, she had never had that before, just those little things and now she knows better, you know what I mean? Like, she's raising her children, and she has set boundaries that say, I'm not allowing that. I'm not doing that. I'm not okay with that, because I know better now. I may not have known better before, but whenever I came into BB and Daddy-O's house, I know better now.
Yeah.
And so those things they're generational change. And that's what keeps us doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Where you have that kid finally make the eye contact with you. You know what I mean? Like, you have that kid finally bring home something from school that is like, it has a smiley face on the behavior, like those little wins, all the way up to the huge wins, you know. And so that's what keeps us doing it. And when we talk about, like, I know that we're going to talk about a little bit of the transition into, from foster care and the parallels to homelessness and why we're doing what we're doing. There's so many wins even on that side of like kids that were not in my home personally, but have been in the system or have been, marginalized and overlooked and unseen, and to see just a little bit, girl, just a little bit of care, a little bit of investment, and the life change that it brings,
Yeah. Well, then let's jump right into it. Jane Around the World. Let's talk about that.
Oh, girl, how much time do we have? You said we got... Oh, so quick and dirty, if you will, so that we can get to the meat of things. So Jane is my daughter. Jane, when she is now 17, about to be 18. Okay. But when she was 12, she wanted to take her friends to serve in the streets, to serve our unsheltered friends, and just bring some hygiene bags, right? Because there were several of her friends that had never served in the streets before. And we kind of had done this like as a family, I guess you can say. There were several times that we just did things. And so she was accustomed to that. So anyway, we said, yes, we'll do it. She said she wanted to do 1,000 bags. I'm like, okay, girl, let's go to H-E-B and figure out how much 1,000 bags is going to cost. Yeah. So anyway, really quick, it was going to be a good amount of money, $6,000 or $7,000, $8,000. And she said, yeah. And she's like, well, we can ask our church. We can ask, such and such partners, community people, whatever. And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah, let's do it. So she had gotten enough stuff to do about 500 bags. And I was like, that's beautiful, but that wasn't your goal. So what are you going to do to get to your goal? Yeah. And, so there's two parts to this. Number one, you guys, if you're listening to us right now and your children have a desire or a passion or a drive to do something that's outside of themselves, get behind them. Yep. Encourage them, galvanize with them, cheerlead with them, help open up those doors, because you never know where the Lord is going to take that. That is a passion that God has birthed within their heart. So come alongside it, because he will do insurmountably more than what you could imagine. Yeah. So that's a sidebar. So with this, she asked if she could do a GoFundMe. Okay. And I was like, I mean, people do GoFundMes for hair extensions, so why not? Let's do it. Yeah. She ended up doing a great job with the GoFundMe. I think that we ended up doing like $3,500 or something on it. Awesome. But what happened is with our yes, because we continued to give God our yes in this process, right? Yeah. He opened up the door for GoFundMe to recognize Jane as the GoFundMe Kid Hero in 2020. Wow. And so that literally changed everything. It catapulted things. There was an international campaign that was done. There was a news footage, like she had we did KHOU news art thing. Like it just changed everything in the exposure aspect, Right. And so then COVID hit. And that changed the way that we were able to serve in the streets. Yep. And so she still had a real desire to serve. And we had resources because we had just gotten all this money from this international campaign that was over $20,000 or so that we have to use, what I mean, for what we said we're going to use it for. And so we started to partner with area shelters and be able to resource them. So in those times that nobody had toilet paper, if we remember that, cleaning supplies, and gloves, antibacterial stuff, whatever, we were able to get stuff because we had the funds to be able to give it to those shelters. So it began this beautiful partnership that we didn't know where God was leading, right? In the midst of all that, we started fostering in our home. We had heard the statistics of foster care and homelessness, but we began to see that firsthand in our own conversations with our friends on the streets, sitting and talking to I can remember specifically talking to this gentleman, Will, that we're having a conversation with him. We had some nice looking backpacks on our arm, and he wanted one. You could tell, like every time he walked by, he's eyeing it. And I'm like, tell me your name, I'll give you a backpack. Tell me your name, I'll give you a backpack, you know? And so it was just, that whole thing is just a way to engage them. You know, people want you to know their name, you know? And so anyway, he finally ended up telling us his name, but he was talking about how, you know, he was in and out of care. He had actually been incarcerated. He had gotten out, yada, yada, yada. At the end of that conversation, I said, can I give you a hug? You know? And I gave him a hug, and like, as we're embracing, girlfriend, you can just feel like him just melting, you know? And so we pull back, and he's weeping. Like, dude, did I like squeeze you so hard? Like, what's happening? And he said, do you know, I haven't had a hug in 16 years.
Golly.
16 years. Can you imagine that? You know? But this is somebody that had walked through the foster care system, you know, that had gone to grandma's house, and then to uncle's house, and then to somebody else that he didn't know because he was placed with them, and to whatever, you know what I mean? And so, so anyway, like, all of this, as we're watching all of this and seeing all of this in firsthand, we're like, we can do more. And Jane had always wanted to open a shelter, but we thought it would be for transitional living, as far as like somebody gets approved for housing. And so then we're able to kind of house them until they get their housing voucher and whatever. But the matter is, the Houston Homeless Coalition is doing a fantastic job in a lot of those areas with some of the agencies that they're working with. And that need is being met, you know, as we speak. And so I'm like, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, Jane. We can come alongside, but we don't need to reinvent. She was like, you know, I don't know. Well, lo and behold, the Lord knew, as we all know, he knew. And so we were able to purchase a property that we now call Beth Horon House. And I'm fast forwarding through a whole lot of stuff, girlfriend, because I know that we have a limited amount of time. But the point is, we saw a need. We knew that we could do more. We gave God our yes, and he provided opportunity for us to have a home. Right now, it's for girls only, ages 18 to 24 years old, that have aged out of foster care or just organically at risk of homelessness. And I use those words because, and I do want to dive into that a little bit more in just a moment, but it's not just about those kids that have aged out of foster care, because sometimes they are electing to stay in extended care, or they're electing to go to the SEAL programs, or they're already in a placement, you know. So we learned, you know, through that process that it's a lot of the ladies that we have helped are basic girls that need some basic help to be able to be sustainably independent.
Wow. And
so what our program is inclusive of is, number one, housing. So obviously we have the housing. We are on target. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to figure out the MOU and lease agreement for Boys Home that will be opening by the middle of 2025. So the middle of next year. But we provide housing, we provide transportation, therapy. They're required to do therapy. We match them with a mentor. There's life skills classes, financial literacy. There's Christ is in the center. So that is an element of the program where they're doing the Bible study, they're doing the church service, they're doing the worship night, you know, so that those girls that have never met Jesus before get an opportunity to meet him, you know. But our whole goal is for them to reach sustainable independence. And so some of them are coming to us not having any documentation. They don't have a birth certificate, they don't have an ID, they don't have a social security card. Down to the girl that does have those things, that has worked before, but, you know, family left and went to another country, and she's left here and doesn't have any support, you know, like different situations. There's so many different situations, you know, but we have been able to see that with just a little bit, and it's not a handout, right? This is a hand up. We're locking arms with them. I said before, we meet people where they are and help them discover where they can be.
Wow. I love that.
Meeting them where they are and helping them, the amount of resources that it takes God provides, girl, and thank the Lord he does, because like there's literally no way that we could be doing this without, number one, following his lead and being in alignment with him. But the amount of people that he has brought alongside us, all the years of community involvement, and me being in outside sales and my husband being in construction and like whatever, like all these connections that he's made over the years that then circle back around. And like I was sharing with somebody earlier, I'm like, this lady, like I met her originally, I don't know, probably 20 years ago when my son was in Cub Scouts, and then we didn't talk for a while. And then we had got back up because her son was in the fire department with my husband. And then we didn't talk for years. And then now she's like one of our number one volunteers, transports our girls all over the place, helps with FAFSA and their college higher education stuff. Got us connected with one of the foundation donors that are going to be a sustaining supporter for us. Like, but this was a Cub Scout connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So anyway, I know I've talked a whole lot around all of that, but at the end of the day, it takes, again, the coming together to meet people where they are and help them be the generational change for their family. So
it takes a hard yes and a willing yes.
Come on. Yeah.
So what would you say would be, and we talked about this in the first segment, is the major link between homelessness and foster care system? Why is it that a lot of children exit the foster care system and enter into homelessness?
I mean, the biggest, and this is the Becky Khan version, right? Because I would say the biggest reason that is because they have control. So they have the control at that point to make a decision on their own, and they have no support outside of the foster care system, right? And so whenever they say, I don't want you, well, then they're saying no to support, but they have control. So it doesn't matter, right? So I'm going to say no to the support, but at least I can make a decision, my own decision, and I'm going to stand by my own decision. And unfortunately, that ends up in a homeless situation a lot of times, because if they do say, I'm going to go live with a friend, or I'm going to go stay, at this motel, that runs out. So then it's a direct, they're funneled directly into homelessness, or, unsheltered, or whatever we want to say. And so to get out of that, like to get out of, number one, there's that poverty mindset. There's the victim mindset. There's entitlement in there, if we're honest and talking about foster care, because the kids that have been in foster care, they've had a lot of things handed to them and everything decided for them. And I'm not saying it's bad. So don't give me hate mail. Like, I'm not saying that it's bad. Like, I think that those things are good, but it does stir up this entitlement in them of like, everything's going to be taken care of for me, because it always has been. And then it's a harsh reality whenever it's not that way.
Yeah. What different can the foster care system do in order to not develop that kind of mindset? Or is that too big to solve?
Man, I don't know. It seems too big to solve, but I think that stewarding the resources in the right way, right? So you have a lot of things just kind of being thrown at the. I mean, I can't even tell you. Like there's so many organizations that come alongside foster care in a well-meaning manner, providing Christmas gifts, providing clothing, providing whatever, just tangible. And I'm talking about tangible things, right? Because if we're going to talk about spiritual and emotional and social, like that's a whole different ballgame,
right?
We need to pull back on the tangible and push in on the spiritual, emotional, social, mental side of things. But it's well-meaning and it's good. But like, if you have a foster parent, or if they're in an RTC, or if they're in a CWAP type situation, like maybe we don't need to give them the big box of, 17 gift cards from different places for food, and the 4 different pairs of shoes, and I know this is a really strong statement and you might get hate mail for this, But like, maybe we don't need to just like give all of that stuff to them, you know, or if they say, hey, I need, whatever for school. And then all of a sudden the school is just throwing it at them. They're not having to work for anything. At a certain time that needs to happen. I feel like there's got to be, in order to set those skills or teach those skills to set them up for success in the future. You know, we need to be able to, and I think that they're trying through their PALS program, but like give them some skin in the game. They want it. They want to be able to make decisions on their own. They want to be able to, have some responsibility, and they want that. They may not necessarily know that that's what they're wanting, but that is what they're desiring. And so rather than just throwing all of these things, now if they're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, like, okay, like we're going to give them the things that they need, and we're going to hold the 17 gift cards and buy them the McDonald's whenever we think that it's right. But it's different when you're dealing with teens and in the foster care system, you know?
So to some degree, the system has set them up to fail.
Yes.
And that's what I've seen too. And I don't have a vast amount of experience. I just see based on family members and friends who have done it and what they've mentioned firsthand, it's the system has set them up to fail.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
You know, when we're talking about foster care or we're talking about homelessness or poverty in general, right? The system does set us up to fail. We have to be reliant upon, I mean, if you just take it from a standpoint of, I can't make over X amount of dollars, or I no longer get food stamps, but I have 4 children, right? This is an example, but you know, I have 4 children. I make $1,200 a month. All of a sudden I make too much money to have food stamps. That's crazy, right? So they want you to be not working,
right?
Completely dependent upon and I'm not saying that they want you to be, I don't know what the right words there are, but what I can tell you is that this is what I see.
Right. Yeah.
So
if you don't fall under this category, then you won't get help.
That's
so it forces you to be in that category in order to get the help you need.
Yes. I had a conversation with a girl yesterday. It was like, I can't take that job because I'm going to make too much money. So I'm like, no, like you want to take that job because you're going to make too much money, right? Like you want to get off of the assistance. This is just, it's assistance. This is not sustainability, you know, but it does become that because then there's TANF, and then there's housing, and then there's the bus vouchers, and then there's the, you know, whatever. And I think that all of those things play a role and are important for assisting, but then we become reliant upon that and they never get out of it. They never break it. Let me tell you this real live example and what I'm so just like, I don't know how I'm blazing this, but I'm going to blaze it somehow. Right. The girls, we had 2 girls come to us at the Beth Horan house about 3 months ago. Whenever I got on the phone with one of them, she was like, okay, this is how the interview went. The initial intake interview. She was like, I'm not pregnant. I don't want to get pregnant. I'm not strung out on drugs. I've not been beaten physically, sexually. I don't have any mental illness. She said one other thing, and she's like, can you help me? And I'm like, yes, as a matter of fact. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because she had called so many different shelters, if you will, or, you know, different agencies. And they're like, well, have you been domestically abused? No. Have you been, or do you have a child? No. Are you pregnant? No. I'm sorry, we can't help you. You know, and the advice that she had literally gotten from one of those agencies was, you should probably get pregnant and the government will take care of you for the rest of your life. Yes. Wow. Yeah. And she's not the only one, because then there was the other girl, and then there's another girl. You know, we were talking to Pasadena ISD. They've been an amazing referral partner for us. We went out to share a little bit at one of their training seminars, and one of the girls that had been referred through Pasadena ISD spoke about how she was referred and what the, you know, program has meant to her or whatever. And she said something really profound, but so simple. And she was like, there's no basic help for a basic girl like me. I don't like the word basic because I feel like this generation is like put this like negative.
You're so
I wanna
basic.
be
Your
yes,
lane, your
yes. And that's, it's not true. It's the simple fact of like, look, I don't have all of these things. I don't
Right.
have this baggage, but like mom and dad never really worked and did what they were supposed to do. So we lived house to aunt to uncle to couch
Yeah.
to car to motel. And now they've gotten kicked out of their last motel. And I don't want to do it anymore. Like, help me figure this out,
Yeah.
And they're just, she was hitting dead end after dead end after dead end. But it's because the system has created the dependence there, and so then the children depend, and then those children depend. And, those girls or young men that want to break that cycle,
Yep.
that is what Jane Around the World, one of the big, like I said, I don't know how I'm going to blaze this, but I'm going to blaze it. Like, this is going to be one of the huge initiatives because those kids want it.
Yeah.
They want it. They just don't have any help. They don't have anybody that's locking arms with them, that's giving them that boost up to say, number one, you can do it.
Yes.
You are able. You are enough. You can do it. And this is how you can do it. You can talk to this person. You can go to this place. You can do this. And then, guess what? Like, now you have a job. All right. You're going to be saving money because you're only paying $100 rent a month here. You know what I mean? You can save all of this money. Oh, hey, guess what? We could probably get your school for free too. Oh, hey, guess what? Like, getting those pieces put together, so that they can, man, I can be something. And my children aren't going to have to go through the same things that I've had to go through, you know?
I like that you said you're not giving a hand out, but you're giving a hand up.
Correct.
Right? I love that because I think there's this stigma towards helping those who are homeless and unsheltered, and that's what the taxpayer dollars are going to. We're just giving out handouts and I'm the one struggling. No, you're giving a hand up. At least your organization is doing that. I'm sure for some this is what you need, check, we'll just give you just so we meet a certain quota. But from a spiritual perspective, you're trying to help them to break generational curses now versus continuing this cycle that their parents started or their grandparents started.
That's right. That's absolutely right. 100%.
So what would you say, can homelessness be eradicated? Sure, that's very loaded. It cannot, but how can we help limit homelessness?
You know what? I'm going to give a really, really simple answer. And the answer is to see them.
Wow.
And the reason that I say that is because we can easily dismiss, right? We can easily dismiss, and we can just say the young man on the side of the road or the young woman on the side of the road, right? We can easily dismiss that, but by driving by. But we also easily dismiss that young girl or that young man that is working at the fast food place, that is living in their car, that is trying to just make it so that they can get gas in their car, so that they can go to their college appointment because they want to start school. We're not seeing them. We're not seeing these people. And because we're not seeing them and we're not asking any questions and we're not listening to anybody's story because we're all about our own agenda and our own next thing that we have to do. Like, I think that we can help by simply seeing them, hearing their story. What is it that is going on right now? And how can I, Becky Khan or Jimmy Joe or Johnny James, how can I help in this situation? Right? Yes, we are doing this massive movement here, with Jane Around the World, and thousands of people have been touched by this. But it started with one. It started with Jane saying, I want to help. Right. And then it started with Will and that hug of like, I see you. I know you want better. And then it was the next yes of our young girl that was aging out and seeing her say, I have control and I'm going to make this decision and this is what I'm going to do. And seeing that and saying, okay, all right, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you make the decision that you're trying to make. You know what I mean? Here's some options. Here's what you can do. Here's what maybe we shouldn't do, but it's your choice.
Right.
So seeing them.
How can you have 2 organizations, Jane Around the World and
so Jane Around the World is the organization, the umbrella organization. There is Beth Haran House, which is under Jane Around the World.
Got it. How can we partner with Jane Around the World? How can listeners invest in Jane Around the World? And this is primarily in the Houston area.
Yes, we get referrals from all over the place, believe it or not. But yes, we are located, like the organization is located in LaPorte, which is the outskirts of Houston. But yes, so to answer that question, there's unlimited amount of ways. So number one, and I don't mean this in any kind of like Christianese kind of way, but prayer.
Yes.
Number one, first and foremost, prayer because we are a volunteer-led organization. We have two staff members, at this moment. We will be hiring a third pretty soon. So you can be praying for a case manager. That would be good. But, because we are volunteer-led, because we do not receive any state or federal funding, everything is privately funded. Of course, grants and foundations and that sort of thing, but no state or federal funding. So it very much is organic. And so prayers for the Lord to provide the people, people that care, people that will see these young ladies and young men, right? Prayers for the donors to come along for sustainability, that's one way. Also, what we can do, there's so many ways that you can come alongside the home specifically. So when I talk about we match them with mentors, well, guess what? That means that we need mentors, right? Whenever I say that we put them through therapy, well, we need partnership with therapists, Christ-centered therapists.
Right.
Whenever I say that we transport them, we made 65 transports last week.
Wow.
So that takes people to say, hey, Beth, you can get in my car and I'm going to take you 10 minutes down the road, so those are practical ways that you can absolutely come alongside. We provide life skills classes. So organizations or individuals that are listening that have something to offer, whether it be from a financial literacy standpoint, like, hey, I could come in and do a class on this, or a leadership class, or how to write a resume. There's so many different ways. What are you good at? What are you uniquely gifted at? And how can you communicate that to young women and young men that don't have examples like that in their life, right?
Yeah.
So those are some really practical ways to come alongside. And then obviously monetarily, that is always a thing because again, we are privately funded. So to keep the lights on, to pay the mortgage, to make the food on the table, all of those things. So,
yeah. Well, Becky, you have a tremendous heart, a huge, huge heart for people, a huge heart for those who are hurting. And I think if anything that stuck and I hope sticks with people is to see people where they're at. Don't just immediately jump to conclusions and think they put themselves in that situation or whatever it may be. See people where they're at, and something as simple but as huge as a hug can help. Hopefully we can have you back on the podcast. 2-part series on foster care and homelessness. Jane Around the World doing tremendous things. I know my brother loves your organization, and Sydney too. Hezekiah and Sydney both brag about you all the time about your work. But this concludes today's episode, part 2. And hopefully we can have you back, Becky. I'd love to hear more about your story and maybe more so on what Jane Around the World is doing, successful stories, things that you've learned in starting this up with your daughter. Maybe there's someone that's listening that has a similar idea for the Dallas Metroplex or in Chicago or wherever it may be. you have the tools, you've walked this through, will be able to share, hey, this is how you do what we're doing, run with it.
I'm down, girl. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
7 Weeks is America's pro-life coffee. It's premium coffee delivered right to your doorsteps. All roast available, and it's absolutely delicious. Start your morning off with 7 Weeks coffee. It's not just drinking coffee, it's drinking coffee with a purpose. Use my code VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order. That is VASHTI10 for 10% off your first order.